Imagine, for a moment, that you are a driver inside a Russian T-72B3. The air inside the hull is stale, a suffocating mixture of diesel fumes, old grease, and the nervous sweat of the two men sitting in the turret above you. It is January 20th in the Kupiansk sector. The ground outside is frozen hard, a sprawling canvas of grey snow and black tree lines. Your orders are simple: advance 3 kilometers, suppressing Ukrainian trench lines to pave the way for the infantry fighting vehicles trailing in your wake. In the military doctrine of the 20th century, you are the apex predator. You are encased in 40 tons of composite armor and reactive plating. You feel invincible, but you are operating on an assumption that died years ago. You assume you are hidden. You assume the fog of war protects you until you make visual contact with the enemy. In reality, you have been dead for 20 minutes. Before your engine even warmed up at the staging ground, a Shark reconnaissance drone, loitering silently at 1,500 meters altitude, logged your thermal signature. As you shift into gear, your coordinates are already being processed by a Delta situational awareness terminal 10 kilometers away. You aren't driving into a battle, you are driving into a mathematical equation that has already been solved, and the solution ends with your destruction. This is the reality of the Kupiansk denial zone. On January 20th, a massive mechanized push attempted to break this line, only to be systematically dismantled before it could even make visual contact with the defenders. Today, we are dissecting the cold mechanics of this failure. We will analyze the frequency wars of FPV drones, the terrifying efficiency of remote mining, and why the so-called turtle tank is not an innovation, but a symptom of a terminal doctrinal crisis. Welcome to the Anatomy of Attrition.
Anatomy of Attrition. Subscribe for more military analysis.
To understand why this specific assault was a catastrophe, we must look at the board. Kupiansk is not just a town, it is the logistical heart of the Eastern Front. It is a critical railway hub that, if captured, would allow the Russian Federation to flood the Kharkiv region with heavy equipment and ammunition. The strategic imperative is clear: take the rail lines, stabilize the front. Consequently, the Kremlin concentrated a massive force ratio, here more tanks, more artillery, and more bodies than the defenders. By traditional military calculus, specifically the correlation of forces models used since World War II, they should have broken through. But the battlefield has become transparent. The Ukrainian defense in depth here relies on a concept known as the sensor-to-shooter complex. In previous conflicts, spotting a tank, radioing the coordinates, and waiting for artillery approval could take 15 to 30 minutes. In the denial zone, that loop has been compressed to seconds. This is an information war as much as a kinetic one. The Russian columns are attempting to use mass and velocity to overcome a defense that operates at the speed of light. This failure forces us to ask a critical question. Is the era of the armored breakthrough over? When the enemy can see your staging areas, track your logistics, and mine your retreat path in real time, does armor still have a place? I want you to comment below, is the tank obsolete, or are we just witnessing bad tactics? Pause the video and let us know your thoughts. But before you answer, you need to understand the 3 layers of hell these crews had to navigate. The first layer begins not at the front line, but 25 kilometers behind it. The denial zone is structured in concentric rings of lethality. The outermost ring, extending 15 to 25 kilometers from the zero line, is the deep awareness zone. In standard NATO or Soviet doctrine, this rear area is a sanctuary. It is where you refuel, rearm, and receive final briefings. However, in the Kupiansk sector, the concept of a safe rear has been abolished. Here, fixed-wing reconnaissance assets like the Ukrainian Leleka 100 and the Shark operate with high-fidelity optics. Unlike the quadcopters we see on Telegram, these drones are resistant to standard electronic jamming. They fly autonomously on inertial navigation if their GPS is spoofed, loitering for hours. They aren't looking for individual soldiers, they are hunting the nervous system of the assault, the fuel bowsers and the electronic warfare trucks. During the build-up to the January 20th assault, Russian logistics officers found their supply trucks burning before they reached the rendezvous point. By utilizing HIMARS and Excalibur precision-guided shells, Ukrainian gunners stripped the assault group of its sustainability. If you destroy the fuel truck 20 kilometers back, the tank at the front becomes a 40-ton paperweight within 2 hours. This is shaping the battlefield, degrading the enemy's physical capacity to fight before the first shot is exchanged. The psychological impact of this cannot be overstated. When a unit takes casualties in their safe zone, paranoia sets in. Command and control structures fracture. The commanders know they are being watched, but they cannot see the eyes in the sky. They are forced to rush their preparations, leading to uncoordinated movements and poor communication. And it is exactly this lack of coordination that leads them directly into the second, and perhaps most brutal, layer of the trap. As the degraded Russian column pushes into the 5-to-1 0-kilometer range, they enter the attrition zone. This is where the physics of the battlefield clash with the electromagnetic spectrum. The primary weapon here is not just high explosives, but the Remote Anti-Armor Mine System, or RAAM. This capability has fundamentally rewritten the rules of retreat. Ukrainian artillery fires these shells over the Russian column. They don't explode on impact. They eject anti-tank mines that scatter across the ground behind the advancing tanks. Suddenly, the safe path used to retreat is gone. The column is boxed in. If they move forward, they hit the pre-laid static minefield. If they try to reverse, they hit the fresh RAAM mines. They are trapped in a kill box of their own making. Panic sets in. Drivers try to turn around on narrow roads, exposing their thinner side armor. And that is when the swarm arrives. You might ask, what about electronic warfare? Don't the Russians have jammers? They do. And this is where the story gets technically fascinating. While the physical trap closes, an invisible war is raging in the electromagnetic spectrum. Russian forces deploy systems like the Volnores breakwater jammers on their tanks. These devices are designed to create a protective bubble of radio noise. They attempt to flood the control frequencies, typically 900 MHz or 2.4 GHz, with white noise, severing the link between the drone and its pilot. On paper, this works. In reality, it failed at Kupiansk. Why? Two reasons: heat and hopping. First, these jammers overheat. They are massive energy consumers. They cannot run 24/7. Russian crews often turn them off to save battery or keep the electronics from melting. The Ukrainian drone teams watch for these gaps. They wait for the thermal signature of the jammer to cool down, then they strike. Second, and more importantly, frequency hopping. Ukrainian drone teams are no longer using standard commercial frequencies. They are using custom-built controllers that hop between frequencies hundreds of times per second. It's a game of cat and mouse. The Russian jammer blocks 900 MHz. The drone instantly shifts to 700 MHz. By the time the Russian system reacts, the drone has already impacted. Furthermore, the newest drones have terminal guidance. This means the final 200 meters of the attack are flown by AI, not the pilot. Once the drone sees the shape of the tank, it locks on. Even if the Russians successfully jam the signal, the drone doesn't stop. It's already autonomous. It becomes a smart bullet. Imagine the terror of the Russian crew. Their equipment says, "Signal jammed." They think they are safe. But the drone keeps coming, guided by its own machine vision. The age of electronic invincibility is over. If you are fascinated by this tech war, let me ask you a question. Do you think AI-controlled weapons are the inevitable future of all warfare? Let me know in the comments below. Many analysts, and perhaps you wonder, but doesn't Russia have infinite reserves? Can't they just overwhelm this zone with mass? This is the horde myth, and mathematically, it is false in the context of the denial zone. Let's look at the geometry. To cross the 25 kilometers of the kill zone, an armored column must drive exposed for roughly 45 minutes to 1 hour, considering the mud and terrain. During those 45 minutes, every single vehicle is exposed to an average of 12 to 15 distinct drone teams. Even with a drone success rate of only 20%, the mathematical probability of a vehicle surviving the trip is less than 3%. Sending 50 tanks instead of 5 does not increase the chance of success. It just increases the target richness. A larger column is easier to spot. It is slower to maneuver. And when the lead vehicle is hit, it blocks the road for everyone behind it, creating a fatal traffic jam. This is inverse saturation. It is not the attacker saturating the defense. It is the defense saturating the data space. Every square meter is pre-calculated. This brings us to a hard conclusion for military traditionalists. Is the main battle tank, the king of the battlefield since 1916, now a death trap? Look at the Russian turtle tanks. These metal structures, welded hastily in the field, prevent the turret from rotating. They make the tank blind and heavy. This is an act of technical desperation. When a superpower army transforms its premier fighting vehicles into mobile garden sheds, they have admitted defeat in the technological race. They are trying to survive 21st century threats with medieval solutions. And yet, they keep driving. Why? Because Kupiansk must fall for political reasons. The cold mechanics we analyze here are colliding with political stubbornness. And the result is the graveyard of armor we see on satellite maps today. If you value this kind of unfiltered, fact-based reporting, please subscribe to the channel. Force Ratio is a small community, and your support helps us reveal the reality that mainstream media often misses. So, what does the failure at Kupiansk teach us? It is not just a local battle. It is proof that maneuver warfare, as taught in military academies for 80 years, is dead in Ukraine. You cannot mass troops without being seen. You cannot move without being struck. The fog of war has been replaced by a terrifying transparency. Russia is trying to adapt by sending small infantry groups meat waves to save their expensive armor. But against thermal drones and cluster munitions, the result for the soldier is the same. The 25km zone remains impassable. For now, the line holds. The force ratio is maintained not by the number of men, but by the density of silicon chips per square kilometer. Kupiansk is not an anomaly. It is the prototype for future war. A war where to see is to destroy, and to be seen is to die. Stay lucid, stay informed. This is Force Ratio. Out.